We're coming to you from the CoinDesk podcast studio presented by BitGo. Founded in 2013 with the first institutional-grade Bitcoin wallet, BitGo is the gold standard in custody, staking, and settlement. Today, BitGo supports over 800 coins and processes 20% of all Bitcoin transactions by value. Check them out at bitgo.com. Let's welcome our next guest to the show. We have Head of Policy at Protocol Labs and the President and Chair of the Filecoin Foundation, Marta Belcher. Marta, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Marta,
it's so good to see you. Hello, hello.
So, Marta, we were just having a very creative conversation, and I know that you love Broadway, and so I just had to get that in there. I don't know. Do you envision a world in the future where Web3 converges with Broadway and all of your loves could just be bundled up under one umbrella?
I love it. Yeah, look, I mean, I think that the NFT world has really made it clear the way that creators can really create something. And one of my other loves is actually the public domain. And one of the things that I have found really cool about sort of the NFT world is the ability to actually sell something and make money from it while at the same time actually putting that underlying artistic work into the public domain, right? The fact that so to me, that is something that was actually really amazing and important from a creative perspective.
Talk to us a little bit more about the public domain, because there's this kind of push and pull from artists. There's this way artists have been trained to think about their intellectual property, and the public domain is kind of like the opposite of that, right? Is there this like mind shift that needs to happen?
Yeah, you know, so for me, I'm on the board of Creative Commons, and what Creative Commons did is basically create a way for people who are creators, whether that's photographers or whatever they do, to actually specify very easily and understandably how they want others to be able to use their work. So basically there are these Creative Commons licenses. One is like CC0, for example, which is like, this is just in the public domain, use it however you want. But you could also say something like CC BY, which is anyone can use this as long as they attribute it to me. Or you could say something like, anyone can use this for non-commercial purposes, but not commercial purposes. So that is something that to me is really exciting and really compatible with the Web3 world, especially because now you can actually sort of make money without having to make it from selling intellectual property. You could make something whatever you want it to be, CC BY or CC non-commercial, but then at the same time you can actually make money.
It's been a huge learning experience for a lot of creatives these past couple of years on crypto and domain and all these things. With Filecoin, with the rise of crypto and really figuring out how do we solve for problems, Filecoin is doing that because some people don't have access to internet, some people don't have access to storage, and Filecoin is kind of helping to solve that, right? Decentralizing storage and also with incentives, and that's pretty cool because now it's not just like money in one way or access in one way. The way Filecoin is doing it is like a 360 economy.
Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. Everything about that I think is exactly right, which is to say, what Filecoin is really doing is creating an alternative to big tech where people are actually in control of their own data, right? Because on today's internet, when you go to a website or you click on a link, whatever it is, that data is actually being stored by one of only three companies, which is Amazon, Microsoft, or Google. Almost always, one of those three companies actually has control of that data. So we really have no choice but to trust those companies with our data. So what Filecoin really does is creates a decentralized alternative to that, sort of like Airbnb for file storage, where anyone can kind of sort of rent out their storage hardware to other people who can store their files on other people's hardware. And that sounds sort of like a niche use case, but it's actually really important because it forms the sort of infrastructure for this decentralized version of the web where users can actually be in control of their own data.
Yeah, and it takes off just the top three, taking in all the business. Now you're incentivizing other people to loan it out. And correct me if I'm wrong, when things go to the cloud, things are like fragmented, right? Like data's over here, data's over there. So if one independent server goes down, you're still in the clear, which still allows for, let's say, the mom and pop shops of servers still can participate and play. Yeah.
Exactly. What it really does is get rid of these single points of failure where, AWS will have an outage and then suddenly people's toasters stop working and they're like, oh my God, we really do have these single points of failure in today's centralized internet. But what you can do on Filecoin is actually store many copies all over the world that don't have interdependencies. So if one of them goes down, you still have the others, you can still access those. And that really enables you to make sure that data is stored reliably over time, which is really important for things like genocide survivor testimony, evidence of war crimes, right? Scientific data sets from CERN, all of which are examples of data that it actually is stored on the Filecoin network because it's so important to be able to store that reliably.
I want to come back to the Creative Commons because you're on the board there. And Creative Commons is great, right? But if a creator wants to use license from the Creative Commons, they need to trust that people are seeing what Creative Commons license they're using and that they are acting in good faith. Is the Creative Commons, you on the board, are you exploring how to implement blockchain so that creators can see who is using their work, how they're using the license, and be able to get credited for that?
Well, that would be super cool, and I will take that to the rest of the board. But for now, really, I mean, I think the thing that is so cool about it is really that anyone can use Creative Commons, you know, and I think it's something that actually is really important for artists as well and creators, because that means that other people actually can use your work. They actually know they can use it, right? Like, because, so like, for example, my boyfriend many years ago uploaded a picture of a gavel to Flickr, and that gavel was Creative Commons licensed under CC BY. And so now that gavel is on literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of news articles worldwide, right? Just this random picture of a gavel that he took, not because he's a great photographer, but because it was Creative Commons licensed. People knew they could use it. People know what the rules of the game are, right? So it actually is really helpful for getting your work out there.
What was that passion, I guess that passion point that got you into the file business, I suppose? What was that thing that inspired you?
Yeah, so I was a lawyer focusing on civil liberties. That's always been sort of my great love. And I was really interested in the technology back in 2015 because I thought it could be really interesting and important from a privacy perspective and resistance to surveillance perspective. So I got really interested in the technology, started representing companies in the space, and then ended up working with, you know, some of the early folks who were working on building Filecoin, and was just really lucky to be part of the team that was able to, you know, with this huge community around the world of developers, really create this thing.
That's beautiful.
I just got to say, we've been asking everyone at the desk all day what they're most excited about here at Consensus, since we're right in the middle of the floor. I know that you spoke. There's several events going on. What do you hope to leave Consensus with this year?
Well, honestly, I have been so excited this year about the focus on DePIN, on decentralized physical infrastructure, because fundamentally Filecoin is sort of like the original DePIN project. And like, we didn't have a word for it before. Like that was like a concept, but people didn't talk about it. And then suddenly this year, everyone's talking about DePIN. And to me, that's so exciting because it really sort of puts into words the way that you can actually use the programmability of cryptocurrency to actually create these decentralized alternatives to the way that we've done things, both in the physical world and in the digital world.
You got to break it down for the audience. What is DePIN?
Yeah, no, I'm
people are wondering. People are wondering.
I'm so glad you asked. DePIN is decentralized physical infrastructure. So the idea is, you know, I explained Filecoin, right? The idea is that you can actually use the ability to program your money, right? This cryptocurrency ability to actually create incentives to do things in a decentralized way. And so Filecoin is a perfect example of that, right? Where you have, you know, before Filecoin, there was IPFS, which was, you know, the decentralized storage network did exist. It just didn't have any incentives. So the question was, well, with IPFS, we have this great decentralized storage network, but how do we actually incentivize people to put their stuff on the network for real, right? And how do we know that if someone puts something up, they aren't just going to take it down, right? And so Filecoin is the incentive layer on top of that. And what it really does is it enables you to know that your files are going to be stored, because people have to post collateral before they store your files. So if they stop storing your file, that will automatically go away. And also you can use the programmability to say, okay, is this file still being stored? Yes. Okay, then you get rewarded for it. And so that's an example of how you can use this decentralized technology to actually do something involving physical infrastructure, right? Involving, in this case, you know, hard drives, right? And physical storage. And you can do that in all sorts of other ways as well. But Filecoin is just one example of this DePIN, decentralized physical infrastructure.
Because that goes into like mining Bitcoin. You get rewarded for mining Bitcoin and adding to the ecosystem. But with yours is like both sides, me putting my file on, I get rewarded, and then also the servers who have finite storage space, they get rewarded for participating in the ecosystem.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Like this the idea that you can suddenly use programmability to create these incentives, I think, is really actually quite powerful.
In a nutshell, like, I don't know, blockchain is amazing because it's allowing for people just to work together, which a lot, like at first when we talked about just the top three companies, now you have all these other people being able to get a piece of the pie, if you will, of all these happening in the cloud and whatnot. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I could not agree more. There's a philosopher named Hernando de Soto who has this idea of dead capital. And the idea is that like a lot of capital in the world is like, you can imagine like a plot of land. If you can't look at that thing and say, that is my plot of land, right, then you really are not able to sort of like take out loans against it, right? And sort of you aren't able to like monetize it. What blockchain really does is take a bunch of dead capital in the world, all the work that people have been doing anyway, and really create incentives around it, right?
Yeah.
Marta, thank you so much for joining us here. I'm sure we're going to see you around for the rest of Consensus. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.
That was President and Chair of the Filecoin Foundation, Marta Belcher. That is a wrap for this section of CoinDesk Live from Consensus, brought to you by BitGo. But don't go anywhere because the crypto culture conversations continue in just a moment with your hosts, Leah Callan-Butler and Marissa True. Thanks for being with us. Stick around.